I got a couple of news articles and stuff. And speaking of commuting, I thought that that would kind of be the. Did you read that stuff? So the federal judge and a state judge has denied the anti-gas tax group's attempt to extend the voters' pamphlet deadline or basically move the ballot or anything. So the gas tax is headed to May 19th. There's just snow. The train is on the tracks. It's going. Um, as a county commissioner, what does, I mean, I know you've been against the gas tax as far as like against adding more to the gas tax and supporting the referral. But as a commissioner, I mean, your funding comes from this gas tax, but is it really that much money?
So 50, 30, 20 is the magic for counties, remember. 30%
Yeah.
is allocated directly to counties. Counties don't have gas stations in the rural, right? So we don't even have the opportunity to put a 3 cents or a nickel on a gallon of gas like a city does. So it's gas tax and registration is how Deschutes County receives funds for road maintenance, improvements, and then after that, it's system development charges, which we do have in Deschutes County. So adding safety improvements and a little bit of capacity with those STCs. So from my point of view, I just wish it would be a kind of a bipartisan, big picture. Everybody's ideas are good ideas, but this was a one-sided, one party raised the gas tax, tried to get everybody to drive electric cars, and I'm driving electric. I've been driving electric for 6 years now. And I'm not even paying my fair share. I'm missing out on about $250 a year is what I figure it is if you calculate the miles I drive and the electricity I'm using.
Oh, really?
So there's things to be done in there.
You have a Tesla, right?
Yep.
Little blue Tesla. Yeah, those ones are kind of zippy. Vicky has been wanting this. She's wanting to get one for Arizona. She thinks it'd be more fun. I took the excursion down there, so I got my big excursion down there. And she's like, it's not as much fun to drive around Phoenix in a big old excursion than it is to do it here at
Here.
home.
Oh, I know. I remember we used to live in Seattle area about 25 years ago, and I bought my first big pickup truck at that time. And I remember, man, I was the biggest thing in the lot. And when we moved back down here, my wife grew up here. When we moved back down here, I was like, oh, I this ain't a big truck. It was just funny to see
Yeah.
the different proportions.
Is So going back to the 50 30 20 split thing. So like right now, so if it's 40 cents a gallon, basically Deschutes County of all gas that's purchased in the county, right? Only in the county. You
Uh,
get,
no, I think it's the whole fund. Yeah, it's probably per capita. I'm not sure the formula,
is it
but
okay?
it's registration fees are per jurisdiction,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure about the gas tax
That's
per
where I
se.
thought with that. I'll have to take a look at the gas tax thing, but
Yeah.
and that you put that together with the SDCs, and then would you say that Deschutes County has a fairly robust, like we do a pretty good job with, I mean, we had the 97 reroute, the big thing that happened at Sisters there, right, north of Bend, and it seems like the stuff that's happening in Terrebonne, but most of that's all state money. So really you're taking care of like what roads and maintenance is really on the county's purview.
So it's the community connectors, if you think about it. If it's not the state highway, it's everything else. Southern Deschutes County, it's Huntington and State Rec, and
Okay.
north of it's Old Bend Redmond Highway is a big one.
That's a big one.
So there's a lot of big
Okay.
you think of them as alternate commute routes, but they're really the commute routes that are not on the decaying state system.
So pretty much, yeah, like that Deschutes Market Road, Old Bend Redmond Highway, the Sisters Road, not Sisters, but the cuts 126 to Tumalo through Eagle
Yeah,
Crest, like roads like that, Powbutte Highway till you get to
yep,
Powbutte.
yeah, yeah.
And
There's a
is
part of County on some of that, but yeah.
and the because it was interesting because the counties seem to be in the cities. It is an interesting scenario because your counties want or need both. You could have both. Need the funding because that's, the maintenance, that's all the things. So an additional two nickel or two pennies would be a big
Yeah.
boost to Deschutes County.
So there's a message in there. I mean, it's a utility. It's our most valuable asset. If we had to recreate those roads, it'd be $1 billion or more. more value than all of our buildings and facilities and vehicles, everything added up together. So it's our most valuable asset is the people of Deschutes County. We always have a maintenance first philosophy, keeping what we have in the best shape we can, pavement condition index. And then after that, as I say, it's safety improvements. Right now, we're working on some roundabouts around the Sun River area, and that's most highly traveled road segments in Deschutes County right now, where we're going to, try to reduce any T-bone collision type activity.
Do you know, like, are other counties? I'm trying to think of the other counties because there's a lot of them that have a lot of state roads that they're really just kind of, they don't got the ODOT, behemoth at 97 or I-5 running through them. There's a lot of county roads where they have a lot of road to maintain. They're like Lake County, I think of like these counties that are just huge but generate $0 really when it comes to gas tax revenue just because it's such unpopulous. But the roads get beat up because the winter conditions are super bad and they just don't get any value out of the road stuff. So I've always understood the value of the need to pay gas taxes because what's the other alternative? How else
Yeah.
do you pay
So
for that stuff?
as I say, it's a utility, and the cost of maintenance is going up, the cost of everything is going up. So there's a path in there. We all should be advocating for something. It's just say this one party system and the adding bike lanes and some of the different things that happen where we're not have other sources of revenue. We're adding more and more onto the requirements of the ODOT dollars without just simple maintenance of the existing roads we have. When it comes to a county, if all else fails, what you do is you fund grinding up a road so it's a dirt gravel road, and then because you can grade that twice a year and get it back to some decent flow. So
Yeah.
that's been discussed in Deschutes County, and nobody wants that, but that's the lower cost maintenance item is to have a dirt road that you just grade twice a year. And that, I mean, that's
There's your
going
county
fast.
road.
That's
Enjoy
going
it.
fast. Yeah.
I think, well, some of those gravel roads aren't that big of a deal. And some of them are actually kind of nice they're fun to ride on in the summertime if you're out in the outback, as they say. But I kind of enjoy them because the cost of paving a road, whether it's in Lake County or if over in Lane County, right? The cost of paving a mile is still the cost of paving a mile,
Yeah.
for the
And it's
most
gone
part.
way up. It's gone way up. The cost of oil, rock, transportation, labor, everything's just going way up. So, as I say, state legislature said, well, the citizens voted to or signed petition to put it on November ballot. Legislature said, well, let's move it back to this, which is going to wipe the slate clean. Politically, it's going to get people to turn out in the primary, but a lot more maybe. We'll see what the dynamics are for November. So we'll have people showing up to say, I don't want this package that was passed by the legislature. But the legislature's job is to figure out how do we cover the costs of
Yeah.
road maintenance. And as I say, maintenance first is a very good philosophy. Interesting dynamic. Remember that the Terrebonne has an overpass and a double roundabout that's going in Deschutes County. It's a state project. It was named in the 2017 package. It was funded by like $20 million, I think, and it wasn't going to happen. Our road department, the engineers, the relationships, we figured out that, hey, we need to lean into this. We wrote a $10 million check to the ODOT to trigger making that project
Yeah.
happen, which is an enviable position to be in because we knew that, hey, let's make this a priority, invest in this state project because it matters for Terrebonne and the safety in that corridor also. So we leaned into it to trigger an ODOT project because if we wouldn't have done that about 2 years ago, it would have slipped away from us and would have been another 5 or 10 years before that would have come back around again.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Hey, for those that haven't figured it out or didn't read the byline, I'm talking with Tony DeBone, County Commissioner in Deschutes County, guest hosting for Reagan. Reagan's out doing, he's got
Oh,
his VBN stuff, so he's in the woods working on the camps for the summer. So they're doing a bunch of cleanup and everything. So Tony gets to come in and guest host with
guest
me.
hosting. I thought I was being
Yeah.
interviewed. I'll put a different
No,
hat
you're
on.
guest host. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll make you guest host because I got some other things I want your thoughts on that aren't just all
What?
about you running for reelection. I think
Oh,
that,
yeah.
I mean, you know so much about how counties are structured and in the legislature, we deal with counties like all the time. Like you guys have a pretty robust lobbying team. Uh, some of them are annoying, some are fine.
We pay them
Now
for
all of them
that.
are gonna ask me which ones. But I think in the legislature, we do care what the counties think, and of course, unless we're on the other side of the issue, then we don't care what the counties think. But for the most part, the counties are pretty good partners to have on legislation. And I've always kind of wanted to ask you that, like, so do you believe is the general theme of AOC? Like kind of local control? Do you think that's always more like you guys mostly advocate for a policy that allows you, besides money, of course, every county's always got to pitch why they need money. But I think like as a general theme of policy, is it always like let us kind of do it until we don't want to?
Well, it's unfunded mandates is the key to the whole thing. Because a
Okay.
legislative session can get in and they're like, hey, we have a great idea. We're going to do this and this, and we're going to make it a law and it's going to be implemented by the counties. Okay, but how do we pay for it, right? So that's
Yeah.
always it's the unfunded
Okay.
mandates. That's the number one item. Remember, United Counties, United Oregon. So that's our motto as AOC, Association of Oregon Counties, United
Okay.
Counties, United Oregon. We are working hard to be a common group of advocates for the people of Oregon at the county level. And as you can see, we're on the upswing. We've got great legislative staff putting our philosophies, our policies together, pulling out the legislative items that we need to discuss directly. You know, I was explaining to somebody what a county commissioner does. You know, we have our budget and policy front end of a county, right? There's 36 counties, about 120 commissioners. All the counties are different. But we have a lot of authority. We just, appointed a sheriff. Not until two of us out of a three-person board vote for the budget does it really get passed each year. So pretty big deal. So yeah, right now
Yeah.
Association of Oregon Counties is working pretty well together, but we're also middle management. And it was a funny concept when you say we can't change laws. We can advocate for laws to be implemented the best they can, but the legislature, it happens, right? Oh, I have a whiz bang idea. Let's go do it and have the counties do it. But if we don't get funded for it, we're in a tight spot.
So I get the unfunded mandates because the cities kind of they always talk about that too all the time. Unfunded mandate. I mean, everything theoretically would be an unfunded mandate. I mean, if we told you to do anything more than what you're doing now,
Yeah.
it's theoretically an unfunded mandate. So,
Oh, that's the starting point. And then you say, okay, well, resources we have, or with new contracts from the Oregon Health Authority or ODOT or Criminal Justice Commission, because those are where all the big contracts come down through.
that's what the healthcare stuff is where, and especially now the behavioral health stuff is really moving into a space where one, we don't have funding for it. And it feels like at some point everybody's got some sort of behavioral health issue. So whether you're doing now you got telehealth in there, you got your some counties that do community health, some don't, some, do it with other providers that provide the community health. So that those things I can see where if the legislature says, "Hey, well, you need to start doing this at the county level," and you're just like, "We're not even equipped to do that." But if you don't do it, then you could get sued by the state,
So
basically.
Deschutes County is, the big boy on the east side of the mountains, right? So we provide a lot of services for other Eastern Oregon partners that have very complicated behavioral mental health, aid and assist, long-term care. St. Charles is our partner on that. We do have a stabilization center, which is kind of a facility for people to be dropped off either by public safety or just walk in on your own fruition, or family members bring you in. But we also serve Harney and Grant and Crook and Jefferson people because we have
Really?
the service level. So the state needs to acknowledge that sometimes too. It's like it isn't as simple as a county border for the services that are provided.
So you provide a lot of those services for other counties with an intergovernmental
Well, no, not a
contract.
lot of the services, but I mean, we'll take if it's a really just super complicated behavioral health, mental health, court, aid and assist situation. We end up taking folks from other parts of the state just because we can manage it a little bit. So,
Okay.
as I say, we're working at a high level in our health department, but on the other, so then we end up with people calling, and it happens all the time. People looking for a long-term care bed. Mental health facility. We have a Deschutes Recovery Center, which is um, a facility that we built with our general fund tax dollars, but it ends up being in the pool of state resources for people because it's all the acuity of a situation,
Yeah.
the humanity of the situation, obviously.
Is that where you're seeing like the biggest growth in budget coming from is kind of the behavioral health, mental health kind of
It's our
space?
biggest department, 400 something people, but it's all state contracts. I mean, we can't, we put in a little bit of money, but we don't have discretionary dollars to fund it. So it's all state
Oh.
contract, Morgan Health Authority.
So they say, here's what the counties can provide, and then the legislature votes on a budget, and that goes to Oregon Health Authority. They allocate it down, and then you got to try to make do with whatever that is
Yeah. And
that
usually
comes.
there's a lot of negotiation for those contracts. And it's truly the biennium. Legislature does something, changes a program, puts money somewhere. Everybody starts rallying around the dollars, how it's going to be fairly and equitably distributed around the state. So it takes us a lot of time for that administrative overhead to even fight for a piece of the pie to do these services on the ground. So yeah, the health it makes your head spin.
Yeah, that's the one spot I'm not really a big fan of. I think that I just that whole Department of Health, if you look at everything in the state, I mean, there's so many buckets of revenue that come in from the federal sources that then go trickle down. And I think they told me like one time they have 6,000 buckets of money in which they have inputs that come into the state to pay for things. 6,000 that the CFO and then all of those bean counters have to follow. That's
So, and
pretty
we have
wild.
organizations. Remember the Association of Oregon County, but we also have the Public Health Officials Organization and the Behavioral Health Officials Organization. So then all the department heads get together and they have their own association who tries to really work out the partnerships and the reasonable distribution of these funds. And then AOC is the umbrella organization. So the board of the Association of Oregon Counties kind of helps all those organizations be the advocate at the legislature. It makes your head spin.
Oh, I can't imagine. I was looking at this article. I put it in the notes. I think maybe I sent you the Willamette Week one on like county budgets. Like, and they talked about Multnomah County's budget. They're $4 billion. And a decade ago, they were only 1.1 billion.
Ours
And
rolls up to about three-quarters of a billion right now.
three-quarters of a billion. What is, because it just looks like I mean it's gone astronomical, Tony. Is that the healthcare stuff that's really just driving that?
Yeah, well, so the measure 5 and 50 locks in our property rates. Local
Yeah,
taxes are as our funds. We've got a permanent rate of $1.28 for our property taxes, general fund Deschutes County. We also have two rates for the sheriff's office, rural patrol, and a countywide rate. And those are about 40 and $50 million is kind of the pool. And as I say, when I talk numbers, I talk general numbers here, and we could pull out the
sure.
books, more. But yeah, so you think of it as 40 something $million in the general fund. It's about $56 million for the sheriff's office with two rates that work inside and outside the cities. But then, so then we also have Black Butte Ranch Police, Sun River Police and Fire, 4-H, and a 911 county service district. So all these other pieces. But that's not even it's about a quarter of our budget. The rest is contracts with the state and grants that sometimes the federal agencies will put out. And then fees for services, though, that's another part of it. Not everything we do is grant funded. Community development, the fairgrounds, solid waste, that's all income and expense with its own balance sheets.
Separate of. Do those run kind of normally in the black, or they usually run if they're lucky they break even?
Well, so solid waste does run in the black, but it's
Yeah.
got a lot of overhead too. So we have reserve funds. We're going to close a landfill here at some point. We'll have 30 years of post-closure monitoring requirements. So we needed to have money in the bank for that. But that's a dial we can change. Our tipping rates are like $60 a ton or something like that, which when you're below 100, come to find out, when you're below 100, we're way ahead of a lot of places around the country because we own the system. We've amortized the system. We're at the end of life for a landfill. So the landfill, we can dial that number. If we have to go to $70 a ton someday, we will. And it'll go up over time. $5 at a time is what we talk about. Fairgrounds is always hard to reinvest in it. Everybody that comes in wants a deal. And we usually like, okay, well, if you're bringing 1,000 people and they're coming in from out of the County, that means they're going to rent a hotel room. So we give them a deal, but then we just don't have enough money to reinvest in carpet, paint, and roof repairs sometimes. So that's always, but it's not losing money. It's just hard to reinvest in it.
Sure. Is the dump, so you're this new dump, so that's done, right?
Oh, it's
Or
solid waste system, right? I don't know what
sorry.
it is.
Well, Lane County and Benton County, they're having some fun issues over there with their solid waste
I just joking.
disposal. Our good buddy Jake, running for county commissioner over there. We've had Jake on the Pelroy on the podcast a couple of times, and Jake's
Good
always
man.
fun. He loves talking about solid waste removal.
Well, and I think they're making a home run material processing recycling center that's very expensive, and it's the next generation. And we're going to do a version of that also. Well, obviously, we all feel good when we recycle, and it's obvious if it's paper, cardboard, plastic, tin, glass. You want to do it, but if there's no back end that pays for it, how do you close the loop on those
Yeah.
expenses?
Will the new disposal area
I'm just joking.
will it be like a transfer station where it's all concrete floors, you come in, dump everything on the concrete floors, and then you guys kind of sort it? Is that kind of how that works, or is
Well,
it
so yeah, well,
kind of
thanks
state
for
of the art
asking.
sorting and everything?
Yeah. So we've got the not landfill is the place we put waste right now, but we also have the facility that's at not landfill, and that is the public front end. You go in there, you drop your waste on the ground, and we'll move it in bulk to the landfill. We've built up Redmond's facility just like
Okay.
that. So when we have a new landfill, it's not gonna be a public facing retail facility. It's gonna be kind of the commercial back end.
Okay.
So instead of pulling the truck out, not going around the corner, we're going to go 15 or 20 miles away. And it kind of boils down to that interesting concept because once it's on a truck, where is it going to go? If we have a landfill in Deschutes County, it's going to be so valuable to have control of that back end waste costs over the next 50 and 100 years
Yeah.
because the big corporates have regional landfills and they would love to contract with us and they'll even give us a great deal. Hey, sign here and you can drop your waste off for X amount for the next 10 years, but then we lose control of the whole system. And we don't want those trucks to be going an hour and a half, 2 hours away, a dozen trucks a day during business hours up and down the highways. So 15 miles, stay in control of the system is the goal right now.
Yeah, because you could contract reversely with or conversely with like Crook County if you wanted to and bring it out here and dump it here. But to your
Yeah.
point, it makes more
So,
sense to.
we've talked to our friends at Crook County. They don't have, for them to take big waste like the size of our waste stream's a lot bigger. In fact, I think they just changed their rates for out of county rates so they could kind of get ahead of this because we might call someday in the transition of from the old to the new. But they don't have the scale of their facility isn't set up for the waste that we would
Oh.
have. So
I
they
thought it
don't.
was. I thought at one point Seth was talking about this idea that he could bring in other people's, like Arlington, because that's where Arlington makes all their money, right? They take Portland's waste,
Yeah.
but that's got to be a pretty big contract. But the reality is I think most people don't really want to take other people's garbage. I wouldn't think. Is that probably the sense that you get that?
Well, no, the corporate regionals they want it. Waste Management and Republic, they're like they want it bad. We talk about train, rail. Prineville has the
True.
short railroad, and if we put them in large cars there, we could send it out of the area. So there's other plays that could happen.
But
But
then
as
that
a
just cost goes up a lot, I just think, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the
Well, and
day.
then the cost, everybody needs to make profit throughout the system. That's the tricky part. So we've got a very cost-effective system now. We're going to transition to another cost-effective system. And yes, it'll cost a little bit more over time, but it'll be just dialed in for our waste creation here in Central Oregon.
Yeah, that's I find that the whole trash business model's a very interesting one because you can get, if done right, right, you can get paid out along the spectrum too. So if you own all the spectrum, like you said, then it kind of helps you keep ultimately that front end cost down because that's the goal. It's not to get to $100, right? So
Well, as I say, we'll work there someday, but we're not there. And I was talking to a consultant. We went one of the national conferences, and he said, "Oh, Deschutes County, I've heard about you." And I didn't understand why he was so excited, but he said it. He said, I can't believe your rates are so low, and because the big cities across, the coasts, east and west coast of the United States, it is astronomical compared to what we're doing now.
Yeah.
We're in a good spot.
Does that vary county by county in the state?
Oh yeah, not everybody even has solid waste. I think of Klamath and Lake County, they're trucking it out. And it's always an interesting dynamic. So yeah, I'm sure the rates are different in each county. Yeah. And it's
Does
a
it re
franchise. Remember, I mean, Oregon DEQ put in a system in the 70s that we're gonna have more control, more environmental priorities on the solid waste. So the local jurisdictions, cities and counties have a franchise agreements around the state. So it's a lot of business.
Is DEQ pretty tough to deal with on the county level when it comes to
Well,
solid
so
waste?
we have DEQ certified lined cells. They're very much a controlled environment. The bowl that we create is big mats underneath everything, clay mats with layers, recycling of the leachate, they call it. So yeah, there's rules and regs on how you even manage a landfill, big time. And then the natural gas, the methane, the landfill gas that comes off, burning it off, collecting it aggressively. We've got a contract to do something, create natural gas with it, put it in the pipeline. And then the city of Bend is outlawing natural gas, which,
Yeah. But it's not really natural gas. You can make the argument that you've created the gas.
well, it's methane that's been cleaned up. Landfill gas is methane that's cleaned up. Yep.
That would be kind of weird to cook food with methane gas from the dump.
Well, but it's already done. It's done all over the place.
Yeah, no, it's great. Why not? I mean, that sort of stuff makes a lot of sense, but I think it always feels like there's an anti mentality. And speaking of energy, which I always find that to be because Democrats in general are kind of like there's normal Democrats, but I would say generally speaking, the Democrat move on climate change is if it burns, it's bad. So if you have to combust anything on any level, that's just bad for the environment. So therefore,
You were gone for about 10 seconds there. Yeah.
so I was just talking about the Democrats. So the Democrats really believe when it comes to energy, like combustible is bad. So
Oh,
anything that combusts, they don't like. Anything that is digging in the ground, they don't like.
well, I'm going to have a bumper sticker that says you can't have it all. Because think about the forest fires and how much carbon goes up and just record speed. We had a biomass plant that we were talking about many years here in La Pine. It's been talked about in Prineville. 20 megawatt watt plant could take all the bio waste from the forest and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it was stopped hard. The solar people are like, no, 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 we need to put solar here. We can't burn anything. But yeah, I think we should have
But the
been keeping
amount,
beneficial combustion. It's called beneficial combustion.
oh, there you go. I like that word. But the word combustion just gets them every time. But I know Mazama Energy is doing that whole thing. I mean, I even met with, the governor's
Geothermal.
office was working on a lot of that stuff. They like the idea of, that the Newberry crater stuff that coming out of there. That's huge for
I
green
live right at the
energy.
base of Newberry here, so this is where I
All
live.
right. But that's I mean, those sort of things are kind of exciting. I mean, the lithium mine out in Southeast Oregon would be huge. I think we could be really, and if we went in and actually did some forest thinning, which could fix some of the wildfire issues, especially the junipers. What people don't understand with junipers is their limbs go all the way to the ground. Whereas a pine tree, they don't have limbs on the ground. So when you have forest fires where there's a bunch of juniper, like stuff travels and it burns hot and fast. And it's because it's so easy for fire to move with juniper trees because the limbs are always at the ground level, and I just feel like, man, if we had a biomass plant, like, even 20 megawatts isn't huge, but it's a decent amount of power that we're just constantly just shoving juniper trees in and they basically it's basically clean energy at that point.
Well, the biomass plant that was proposed here in La Pine, the idea was they needed a kind of a funding package, 20 years to get, the bonding or whatever. But they thought they could do it for 12 cents a kilowatt hour wholesale out the back door. So 12 cents is four times what Mid-State Electric pays for BPA power, so 3 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
I pay almost 8 cents at my house, so that's even more than the retail of a co-op. Uh, uh, and that's why I'm driving electric. I figured that out. I'm like, oh, I got an opportunity here because it's like 14 cents at Pacific Power, maybe 15 or 16 now.
Oh,
So,
really? Okay.
and I always think of that, that kilowatt hour penny number because you can talk megawatts and bigger numbers too. So it is more expensive, but if we have BPA power from the dams and we mix it with this other more expensive power, it's a wonderful opportunity. And then the
What
solar
would,
guys come along and say, "Oh, but solar is free. We just need, X billions of dollars to build out the infrastructure so you can have
yeah.
your free solar power." And that's where the conflict is. That everybody's pushing and pulling on that dynamic.
Where is going to be like the Newberry crater? Do they know like where they're estimating at kilowatt hour? Have you
Well,
heard
so
anything?
yeah, I've been up there talking. There's two companies that are working on it right now. It's 10,000 feet down into the Newberry caldera, not towards the magma, but the hot rock that's there. It's superheated steam. So it's like I don't know, 350 Celsius or whatever the numbers are, way up there. And that once you get way past that supercritical steam phase, it's like 30% more energy comes out. So that's the magic that's happening up here.
Huh.
Because, once you boil water like an old steam locomotive, you can make something move, but this goes up another 30% because of superheated steam. Uh, my understanding is they're talking about either like a 15 megawatt plant would be the first one possibly. And 15 megawatts is the only reason because there's power lines that go into the local system that could handle that, or 50 megawatts. But they'll probably start building 100 megawatt facilities and do many of them. Because they're talking, and once they get going, they can just keep building 100 megawatt plants and have gigawatts coming off the side of the mountain.
No way.
Isn't that
Wow.
amazing?
It has that much power capacity ability,
Yeah.
huh? Wow. But we still got some transmission issues in Central
Well, that's the
Oregon.
thing, the transmission, the backbone. Solar has, as I say, solar bought out the wheeling capacity of the biomass back in the day, and they're so
Yeah.
proud of themselves. And now there's a 500 kilovolt line that Pacific Power is talking about going from Redmond down to Klamath, either down the 97 corridor or through Powell Butte over to Northern Lake and then over here.
I'm sure
Powell
we
Butte
like that Powell Butte one, but
Paula Butte sure doesn't like that. But I mean,
yeah.
it's the big supersized, man tower. They look like a guy
Yeah.
with his arms out. But
Yeah, I think there's one route that would probably work through Powell Butte, kind of that existing route. So hopefully they figure because the transmission is important because otherwise, but I just feel like if you look at a like kilowatt or maybe even megawatt per acre, like these solar farms are just horrendously large for the amount of megawatt power they produce, and all they're doing is destroying our landscapes, and it's really just not worth it all. I don't have a problem with solar. I think Elon's probably on to something that, eventually we're gonna have to use solar from and probably from outer space. I love listening to this podcast about like where there all of our data centers that everybody that seems like everybody seems to hate now. All of a sudden we hate data centers, which if you're Prineville, I think you're pretty happy with your data center.
yeah.
I think Klamath Falls is pretty jealous. I think some other areas would like to have their own data centers, but I love the idea that potentially data centers being in outer space, all powered by solar, because you're that much closer to the sun. Like those sort of things are really cool, but we've only got so much land in America, and then chewing it all up with solar fields just seems pretty backwards to me. But
Well, and then the technology is amazing. Think about the 75 kilowatt hour battery in my Model 3 Tesla. And that's enough to run your house with all your electric appliances, water heating for a day, if I was to charge it and use it for that purpose. And if we put solar panels on top of your house and you have the new technology of the batteries, and the next vehicles are going to be grid tie two-way, so you can charge it when you have electricity, use it when you need it. I mean, I don't know that we have to do these supersized fields of electricity. You could probably,
mhm.
the next generation of technology could really do a lot more at home. So then I've thought about this. I used to work at a renewable energy company. Then you get your electricity from utility instead of a 200 or 400 amp panel. you get a 50 amp panel and you just charge your batteries locally when the sun's not out, and then the
Yeah.
system overhead goes way down.
Huh.
But
I like the idea of putting them on top of how, I mean, why not, right? Roofscapes are great. Parking lots are great. Places like that where, especially if they could be self-contained loops, that seems to make a lot more sense. I like that idea. That makes more sense to me than
on
this
the
these massive solar fields. And I don't know. I'm not a big fan. We have more of them. You could Kirk or Deschutes County's
I,
done. You guys only got a few.
we've got one that's they're talking about between Bend and Redmond on county land that we're letting them dream a little bit. So we may have something come around here, which would probably be through the trees and visible on that commute between Bend and Redmond. So if that comes to fruition, though, it is base power for where we need to be. If they put batteries in, then they can use it in the evening. So there's all kinds of variables in there.
Do you think that with I mean, I guess they're removing juniper trees, so that helps our wildfire discussion, but I mean, there's that. But I just think long term putting concrete in the ground like that, it's just very difficult to pull out later. Like you said, the technology keeps getting better and better and better. And so I feel like at some point, if it's on county land and this hedge fund, most of these things are owned by hedge funds because they're just ripping out the tax credits and taking the money. However, they're not losing money, that's for sure, and they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So if you tell me it's a hedge fund, then they're obviously making a profit somehow or another,
Well, the
right?
energy is free. You just need to capture it and distribute it.
Yeah, true. But if the county does a lease like that, I'm just afraid, like, what if technology gets so good and then all of a sudden, they go, yeah, well, we're no longer, this LLC no longer exists, and good luck suing us, and see you later.
No,
And then
there's
we're left to
bonding.
this shit field.
That happens. Bonding requirement for decommissioning is part of the land use approvals. The idea is like 20, 25 years out, you need to have a bond in place for decommissioning. And decommissioning may or may not happen, but it is a hard requirement.
Sure feels that way. I don't know. Hey, I just want to get your thoughts on like wildfire stuff. Everybody seems to be talking about how it's really going to be a really bad year this year because of the really bad snowpack and stuff. I was reading some stuff online, like nationally. They were saying they're really worried about Alaska and like inner like Alberta and kind of up in that area because of, I guess they've gotten a lot of less moisture altogether, but that seems to be where they're worried. What in Deschutes County, we had a couple scares last summer.
So Newberry's that way, and we just had a fire that way about 4 days ago, right? So interesting.
Pretty early. Yeah, I know you
So
guys had one not far
I
away.
always think about the book, The Big Burn. That was the beginning of kind of the national system of national parks having to manage mega fires in the 30s is when that happened. But 150 years ago, before settlers built out, now we have neighborhoods in some of the rural areas. It used to be a lightning strike fire would walk slowly across the forest floor, consume all the juniper saplings and small jack pines. The ponderosa woods would survive, and then they'd become big 40, 50-inch pondos. So we've really messed up the environment here in Central Oregon. For every property owner, though, you don't have to be you don't have to come to the conclusion that it's going to be a disaster. Needles out of the gutters, first 5 feet, trimming up the trees, making sure there's a clear area around your house. Because what we have to deal with is an ember shower. An ember shower coming from a quarter or half a mile away in a hot wind-driven day with low humidity. That does not mean disaster for every house. We've got a lot of houses that need a lot of work, and this is why I advocate, please go out there. And even if you're, in your senior golden years, you could probably reach up to a 4-foot branch that's close to your house and cut it off slowly. So I'm serious about that. Everybody needs to get serious about that defensible space around your house. The forest, U.S. Forest Service, BLM, has spent a lot of money opening up the forest around Bend, the west side of Bend. The collaborative has been in place for many years. There's not enough money in the world to fix forests without some kind of logging activity, but that's, as I say, for federal interest to work through.
Yeah.
Um, we've got history of some pretty bad fires in Deschutes County, but we have Project Wildfire. We have fire adapted communities, um, certified neighborhoods. So it's, and I remember in the 90s, I came here before my wife and I got married, and grandma said, "Don't you touch those trees." And they were 6 and 8 and 10 foot trees, and now they're 20 foot and they're all spindly next to each other, referring to jack pines and northern climate
Yeah.
here. If I would have known 20 years ago, I said, "Oh no, the prescription is you open them up 10-foot spacing, let them spread their branches, have an open understory." But I didn't know. I didn't know 30 years ago. I wish I would have known.
Hmm. I know, I think wildfire is one of those things. I'm always scared because I think Deschutes is one of those counties that, and Bend even,
Yeah.
that could look like
Little
LA, right? I
sisters.
mean, given a really bad wind event
Yeah.
and a very dry day in, August, late August, we could, the whole city could go up. I mean,
I always
it's
worry about sisters is like that. We had the threat to
sisters,
Silver
yeah.
Pine for the Darlene fires. We were out there with the governor talking about housing and urban growth expansion this last summer. And we're standing out there, brand new homes, and they all have wooden fences between them, real tight in their backyards. I'm like, that's maybe a choice that we shouldn't do. Just dry cedar boards between all the houses, because that's where, and it's an ember shower. Once again, even if the fire is, half a mile away, and we saw that in the flat fire last summer, came south from Jefferson
Yeah.
County, from private property, across the grasslands towards northern edge of Deschutes. It's the ember shower that's a half a mile ahead of it that you have to worry about. So we've got great Forest Service people. We've got great fire people. When the fire agencies say we need an operating budget bond for the next 5 years, people pass it. We've got resources. Problem is, if it's that hot, wind-driven day in August and it's happening in multiple places, then you're going to be on your own. That's the moment that we really have to look out for.
Well, 2020 was probably the last,
Yeah,
the
where
Labor
we
Day
saw
of
that.
2020 was probably the last where we had, and we're not equipped as a state to
Yeah.
fight multiple fires on multiple fronts. We are not equipped for it. We
Yep.
just don't have the manpower, and the U.S. doesn't have the manpower. I mean, I remember my brother was in the National Guard, and he would have to go out. And even when I was on wildfires out of Doofer, like I remember one summer he was out and he's National Guard. And I'm like, "What are you doing? You have no idea what you're doing." He goes, "I don't know. They gave me this tool and said go out there and fight fire."
Uh,
So
well, we've seen.
it's pretty wild, but we really aren't equipped. I mean, I think we never prepare for emergencies. We don't tend to. We tend to, just react to them instead of having
Yeah.
kind of a plan, right? And I think your point is like have a plan, get after it, especially with the defensible space. Because I was like you, I was doing some pile burning this last weekend with my son, and we're cutting up the last of the junipers, and he was wanting to kind of torch this hillside, and I was thinking about the fire you guys just had on the pine, and I'm like, no, you're not.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
not. The wind was blowing just enough. I said March, I wouldn't normally worry about it, but it's been really dry.
But Warm Springs does it though. They do their fuel management by doing big old field burns, and they just let a wall of fire walk across the grass out there.
Yeah.
So, that is a good tool, but you need to be designed for it too.
That's what I want to do, but I just think, I just don't need the fire truck showing up at my house.
I know.
I guess maybe I should tell them. That would probably help.
Well, we've
Hey,
got COIC and our 4-H extension people and the Forest Collaborative. There's people that will help with private property understory burns. Designing a solution and giving you
yeah.
a guidance on how to do it right.
Well, I'll let you get going here, but I kind of wanted to ask you, just because it's on everybody's mind, what do you think of the governor's race, Tony? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
I'm
Pretty
excited.
wild, huh?
It's 2010. Chris Dudley and I just happened to be side by side running for office. I remember him coming through in his campaign bus back in the day, and I was wide-eyed. That was impressive. I was like, "Wow, the governor's race!" And I was running for county commissioner at the time, and I won and he lost, which is awkward, right? But this feels like that. This is the next cycle where, hey, come on, folks, pay attention. Do we want to keep going down this path, or do maybe there's another opportunity? Vibrant economy. Protecting people that need, community services. I'm referring to elderly or behavioral mental health stuff. We all want to do this kind of stuff, but there's possibly a different way to be doing it. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward. Primary election, May 19th, we'll have a whole list of people on the ballot on the Republican side. Democrats are kind of locked down with what they want to do and who they want to do it with. So I hope folks are getting real engaged, paying attention. And I'm trying not to get too political here.
Ah, look at you. Why not? Like I think it's I know you're trying to walk the game there. Well, you got a candidate that's a fellow
Danielle Bethel is a
commissioner.
commissioner.
Yeah, well, we love Danielle. She's been on
Yep.
the podcast, and
Yep.
Chris has been on. Good friends with Chris. I think I've always been I'm a big fan of a robust primary because I really want because basically, and the Democrats have zero primaries, so I really like the fact that we get to talk about our ideas and what our vision of the state of Oregon would look like, with multiple different candidates, and I think that being able to communicate what that vision is and not just be anti-Kotex vision. Like I kind of in a primary, I want to hear like what your vision is. And I think like Vicky and I are both really good friends with Chris Dudley, but I'm also good friends with Daniel Bethel, and I'm friends with that deal, and I am on an on and off again relationship with Christine. I think when it comes to being friends, I never know. But I just think that those four in my mind are really strong candidates for Republicans, and I'm really happy to see those four kind of like emerge and then have the kind of the not really the battle, but the discussion. I'm sure it'll turn into a battle because, you always want to win, but the reality is I hopefully they don't, start knifing each other because I think that hurts us in the general. Because I'm with you, I do want to see here's our set of ideas. And it's going to be what is our set of ideas and what's the failures of the Democrats versus what's the Trump era, right? I mean, it's going to be basically the Kotek trying to drag us into a Trump fight and us trying to say, yeah, whatever you think of Donald Trump, whatever, but we're the state of Oregon.
Hmm.
Let's look at what we have in front of us and what we can do. And then you go all the way down to the county level where I always feel like with your race and the other races we have in Deschutes County, which is super unique because we're going from three commissioners to five commissioners. Patty's not running with you. She's been your running mate for a few cycles now. I just think there's a lot of different nuances in the Deschutes County level stuff because near a hyper growing county, you're thinking about state issues and how it affects you guys because you guys are more affected by what lawmakers do statewide, like you talked about earlier. The federal government doesn't really affect you a whole heck of a lot, but it used to when we were logging and you got county payments, right? That was probably a big dollar
Well, yeah,
amount.
payment in lieu of taxes, secure rural schools, but those are payments for not logging, which is always awkward. And we don't have those big 40-inch pondos like there was 100 years ago here. I
That's
mean,
true.
there's some, we have smaller, but we definitely have biomass. We could chip up junipers all day, every day.
I think so. I don't know. And the federal and the shoots forest, they could be cutting trees out of there all day long. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Do you think with the Deschutes County commissioners, like you're out there and about, like what are you hearing that what do they really want from
Well,
you, do you
I
think?
can tell you it's an interesting dynamic. So COVID came on, right, 2020, 5, 6 years ago now. And we thought, oh, here we go. This is bad. Let's shut down, batten the hatches. This is it. And then all of a sudden, people came here to recreate and they did long-term month rentals instead of weekend rentals. And then they bought houses for $1 million cash instead of, young families trying to make it here. So the dynamics changed so drastically from COVID. So then we were found out. We were one of those, Intermountain West towns that has high-speed internet and a cool beer scene, which we've had for the last 30 years, 40 years, but it changed the dynamics. So now
Hmm.
people are a little panicked. Now that I'm here, how do I kind of shut the door behind me? Let's make sure this place stays the way it is now that I'm here. But prudent managed growth, resource management has got to be the place to be. And that's what we see sometimes in these elections. Vote for me and I promise I'll shut her down. But that's not healthy either. If you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not growing, it is not very comfortable. those $1 million home purchases all over Bend and rural all over the place. We can't all just stop and retire. We've got to have a vibrant economy around us also. I
Yeah,
got ideas.
I agree. I mean, I think Deschutes County needs another city. I think there needs to be another town. I mean, La Pine's the
Milliken,
youngest town, and
Milliken.
I don't know about Milliken. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Out east, and more people keep going east.
Uh, We've got Tumalo and Terrebonne. We've invested. Remember, ARPA dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars. This is another classic situation where Deschutes County was in a stable financial situation. So when we got millions of dollars from ARPA, American Rescue Plan, we were able to write checks back out for the good things that needed to be done. So we've got the original platted, you know, lot townships of Tumalo and Terrebonne, and we're helping them by writing checks and doing some design work so they can add sewers to their area, and which they're
Yeah.
allowed to do because they are unincorporated communities with a town plat from before the land use system. So we kind of do have two new cities. They
Okay.
don't have city councils or mayors, but we represent them.
I don't know if we need that. I mean, that just adds more layers of government. He thinks we should get rid of cities.
Well, as I say, Tumalo and Terrebonne both are, and they're in those growing pains areas too. They've got commercial businesses, food truck lots and
Yeah.
small house opportunities. The lots are very small, so I would say a double lot in Terrebonne is probably the way to go for a residential. But they're already platted, super small. So then, yeah, you can put a small house out there, and if they had sewer, there'll be other opportunities. So there's some
Yeah.
interesting things happening.
Yeah. No, that stuff's kind of good. What do you see? And last
Are
question
we
for
going to go
you
for a
because I
whole
want to
hour
get it
here?
on there since you're running. So,
Yep.
what's your vision of Deschutes County? Like, what's the future look like in a Tony DeBone like mentality? Like, what's the future you're fighting for Deschutes County? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I do live in southern Deschutes County, city of Lapine Incorporated. So this is the youngest county in the state of Oregon. We seceded from our friends at Crook County in 1960. And but Deschutes and Lapine is the newest city in the state. So that's a new urban growth boundary. There's going to be houses there. There's industrial lands. There's already some people building buildings, spec buildings, and also moving some businesses here. So the transition's happening. City of Bend has come on with biotech and the I worry, it used to be the brewery town, right? Deschutes Brewery and all the spinoffs, but that kind of went flat recently. Redmond is the place for industry, though. East side of Redmond, look out. They've got multiple businesses in there. Large investments are happening. And then Sisters is surprisingly robust with its economic base. So I always think about that. What's the next generation going to do? And I think I mentioned this, we can't all just stop, retire, and recreate. I mean, somebody's got to be able to create wealth, provide services. Traded sector is selling a product or a service outside the area and bringing back money into the area. There's a big group of people that just brought their wealth with them, but that's just kind of a dead end for people that don't have that wealth. So that's my vision. Let's enjoy being here. Let's recreate. We've got lakes and bike trails and all that kind of stuff. 79% publicly owned in Deschutes County. 79%.
Dang.
So whatever we do on our private property, is in the state land use system, obviously, because the state land use appeals is what is our world too. I'm not too worried about it though. We're not talking about high density. We're just talking about housing for people. So a couple different topics. You can see how they might all fit together here.
Yeah.
We moved here very specifically when my son was going to be in first grade. My wife grew up here. He had a great childhood. He's just a highly functioning, well-adjusted young adult now. So pleased with it. Um, but we need to just kind of keep fighting for that. A reasonable American, the opportunity to get ahead.
I really see. I mean, well, I agree with your vision on Deschutes County, like where, I mean, it's the engine is coming, and I'm glad to see that we're not focused on just tourism efforts. Like at the end of the day, we got to have industrialized goods at some point where we're making it and selling it elsewhere and bringing in dollars because a dollar in is worth so much more than recirculating the same buck. So I think that part's really great. And I think Crook County's helping with that effort as
Oh
well. I
yeah.
think the regional stuff is really important. Jefferson
And the
County, I mean,
best
they do
thing,
nothing. Jefferson County sucks. We don't need to worry about
no,
them.
no, the best thing we can do with water in
But
Deschutes County is get it to Jefferson County, right? So there's water is a big deal. Water is a big deal.
water's a big deal.
But if we can get more agricultural water for the farmers into Jefferson County, they make money with that. You know, the soil and the elevation and the growing conditions are so much
Yeah.
better. Long Bridge, the very top edge of the county, is a place that we can grow things. But a lot of the farming here is lifestyle farming, and if we can optimize our water and send it to Jefferson County, they can make money with it.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea where they instead of putting in a whole new pump station at a different part of the Deschutes River and pumping it up, instead of running it through the canals and all the way out to Powell Butte and back to Haystack Reservoir and then repumping it to people in North District. It's so crazy to me that, but the amount of money it takes to draw that water, from Lake Billy Chinook or down that way up out of there.
Yeah.
You're talking what, $1 billion or something at this point now to do that. That's pretty wild. But you're right. There's not a lot of whole need for a bunch of water in Deschutes County when most of that need is Jefferson County. Well, thanks, Tony. Thanks for coming on and shooting the crap and being the guest host today with me. And we'll do it
Yes,
again. Hopefully you'll
mustache.
win May 19th. I look for you to win. I mean, I hope so. We'll see how things go. There's like what, 20 candidates total in four positions. So
Yeah. So yeah, four seats, two of them existing, two of them new. I'll be holding on, to my seat is my plan. I'm operating. I'm honored to be serving. I enjoy it. As you can hear, there's enthusiasm in my voice. We were just talking to the Redmond class, and the three of us were talking and kind of trying to talk over each other and tell everybody stuff. And somebody afterwards came up and said, "Man, you're just so enthusiastic as our commissioner." So what a great honor for somebody just to say that to me.
well, hey, you're not Multnomah County where they're just trying to figure out how to stop people from moving to Vancouver. So you have a better problem.
Yeah, no, it's easier than yeah, what's going
All
on. Sure.
right,
Okay,
thanks, Tony.
Brian, thank you so much. Take
Talk
care.
soon.